The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra high-quality video by the world's leading artists. If you like what you see, help us support our artists and our team with your purchase. Each video aired has a special discount code for today only in the comments section with a link to the video offered. And to see everything we do, or if you want to receive notice of new releases, new products, and new events for artists, simply click the other link, which says, "See everything we do." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Rhodes with Plein Air and Fine Art Connoisseur magazines. Want to make your paintings come alive? It's all about the brushwork and the light, the backlight. You're going to enjoy this video from Cheri Christensen.
All right, hi. I'm Cheri Christensen. I've been painting for over 25 years, both painting and teaching. And today we're going to do a video on backlighting and brushstrokes. My subject matter is going to be the little chicks. People really love my chick paintings. And I really want people to kind of concentrate on making it feel like a chick. So that's why we're working on the brushstrokes here along with the backlighting. In a moment, we'll start talking about value, and I'll show you steps if you want to do a black and white study before you do this if you find value difficult. Anyway, let's get started. So I just wanted to go through a value study for you so you can see the process of what you're going to be doing in color. Again, if you want to do a black and white first, it's a good way to get started. So here are the same chicks that we're working on. So when I say start with the shadow shapes, this is what I mean. Okay, I've done a quick drawing, come in, my background was the darkest. This chick would be my second darkest. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So this, even though right now it's looking like light and that's looking like a light, these are all your shadow shapes. Why that's important is because everything's relative and you need to be comparing what's darker, the next, and the lightest dark. And the challenge here is, because this is a white chick, is to not get it too light that it's as light as the lights. So you're going to see, right now it's looking kind of light. But when I go to here and I start adding the lights, it falls back into the dark shadows. So same thing on lights, you're going to compare which is the lightest, which is the darkest. So my lights, this is my darkest light, and then it would go to, these are really close, but I would say this would be the second, and that would be the brightest light. So that's how you're going to compare while you're painting. You're going to do the same thing when you get to color. What you're looking for in color. What basic color is it? Is it more red, blue, green, yellow? What is the color's intensity? Is it very vibrant, neon color, straight out of the tube, or is it a grayed down color? So that's how you're making your color choices. Also, what is the temperature of the color? You know, you look here and the temperature here is much cooler than the temperature there. So that's how you're making your decisions. And it's all about getting it on the canvas or board, making those adjustments, making sure your values stay, the dark stay in the dark, and the light stay in the light. But after you get all of those things down, then you can go in and start working on things more like modeling the form, your brushwork, all of that. So anyway, let's get started. So now I just want to do a quick statement on the palette, how I have everything laid out. I like to keep my colors to the sides so you have a lot of mixing room. And that way, if you always lay out your colors the same way, one, it's good to be organized. 2, you should be almost able to paint blind. You just know where you're going for that color. If you mix them up and put them in different places, you're never going to get that. If you make little dots, oh, I need more of that color, and you're putting it here, it's just really frustrating. I have a hard time painting on students' palettes when it's not organized. And I'm not a big organized person, but here I'm organized because it saves me a lot of time and energy elsewhere. This is what I've got. I've got quick dry white. You can also use titanium white, but my whites usually go pretty thick and take a long time to dry, so quick dry helps with that. This is Cad Yellow Light. Oh, and I just put my hand in the paint, cool. The Cad Yellow Light, and they're all Gamblin paint, and not that you have to use Gamblin, but I like the consistency of it, so I don't have to add medium to my paint. I do have Gamasol, and I use 2 cans, 1 to keep my brushes in and kind of clean them, and 1 to kind of get some fresh Gamasol when I need to thin it. So I use that as a medium. The Cad Yellow Light in Gamblin is a cooler yellow, and I'm not sure how often I'll use it here, but if you had something with grass, it's really nice to have a cooler yellow out there. Then the Cad Yellow Deep has a lot of warmth. I love this color because I can use it with white to add that pow warmth to the white, because otherwise white on its own is really cool, and a lot of students make the mistake of when they're trying to lighten things up, they put like a straight white there and it doesn't show the light correctly, if it's a warm light on the subject, because it's too cool. So this color, if you couldn't buy any of the other Gamblins and you need to, you're on a budget, get this one, because it's expensive. Paint is expensive for a reason. It's because it has the pigment in it, and something without enough pigment is really hard to work with. Okay, then yellow ochre. Sometimes that's on my palette, sometimes it's not. You can mix it, so if you want a more limited palette, you can take that one off. Cad Red Light, a great color. I like this one is just much more vibrant and warm than, say, alizarin Permanent is a cooler one. I used to paint just with alizarin Crimson straight, but it's not very light fast, so I switched over to the Permanent, getting used to it. It's not quite the same, but it's worth it that it lasts longer on the painting. On the other side, over here, I've got 2 blues, and you can kind of see I'm doing the color wheel, but over here I'm changing it just because if I have my blues next to each other, I can easily grab the wrong one. Ultramarine blue, it's a warmer blue, so if it's something like this, there's a little warmth happening in there, so I might pull that in. Phthalo green, I use very little of it. Again, if you wanted to take something off of your palette, you could take that off because you can mix green. I'm all about mixing your paint rather than just grabbing it straight off of there. It helps the whole painting to swim in the same colors. Here, phthalo blue. And phthalo blue can be a friend or a foe. I call it a friend, but some students have a hard time with it. If you can't take a bunch of phthalo blue because I think I already have some on my hand a little bit. It just runs on everything, but it's transparent, and I like that about it. And I like the fact you can just take a little bit and it can tint things. So, and it gives it, kind of the pow, like if I'm painting a rooster or something like that. On that black, you get sometimes this little sheen of blue or blue-green, and it's great for that. So I love the color. Ivory black. I do use black. Some people don't. I like black, but I don't use it just to, make shadows with it. I use it usually when it's something that has black in it. I'll probably mix it with something else like alizarin, so it's not so opaque and heavy. So yeah, use sparingly, but do use it when needed. And if you're thinking of shadows and thinking shadows are black or gray, try to stop yourself from doing that. You can mix the shadow color and gray down better through complements, and you're going to have a more interesting painting. As far as brushes, normally I can paint a whole painting. Just these are Silver Grand Prix. I got a couple fairly new ones here. I can paint a whole painting just with these. They're a bristle brush. I like bristle brushes because they leave brush marks. And that's what my painting's about. I like texture. If you don't want texture, you know, a sable or something like that's good. I did pull out for this one a couple that are, it's a sable cat tongue. Just because on a smaller painting like that, to kind of get in around the eyes and stuff, I use this. You know, when you're painting a portrait or something where you want smooth lines, a sable is, you know, a great brush. Again, I like to see the brush strokes, so I don't use it as much. Also, when you put this down, you're kind of smushes it a little bit. It doesn't always leave the paint on there. If I hit it just right with one of these bristle brushes and pull it back, I can get a much more intense color. It just leaves the paint on there better. So that's why I use those mainly. I am going to add these two to my arsenal because it is a small painting. And then I have a few more of the larger brushes here. Probably won't use these much on this because it's such a small painting. Gamsol in both of these. This one to kind of clean with. This I try to keep fresher so it has cleaner color. Ampersand, gesso board. You can paint on canvas board, whatever you like. I like this because it's not too slick, holds the paint well, and it has Venetian red gesso. Some people just tone a canvas, and in a second I'll show you just what I would do to tone something like this. It's not as heavy. If you paint lighter, you might want that. But I like the Venetian red gesso. I like having that warmth kind of come through on my paintings. All right, so if you prefer to tone your canvas or board, this one was done with a little transparent earth orange and got Venetian red. The transparent earth orange is great because it keeps it more transparent. You still get the color, and I put this on in a wash with Gamsol. Just let it dry a little bit and then wipe off the excess. That way when you're painting, it's not mixing with your paint. But you can choose any color. It's just the look that you're going for. I like warm colors. Some people like to do it with a cool background. The only thing I would warn against is using the phthalo blue because it'll keep mixing with most of your colors and it can be difficult. So the first thing that I like to do is just take a look at your reference material there. I don't do a really involved drawing, mainly because I just want to get the placement down to make sure nothing's going off of the page or the board. And with small ones, it's pretty easy to do. Move these over so I got fresh to go in there. Okay. And what color you draw with is up to you too. I like a little bit of my drawing to show through at the end. So to stop myself from going too high, I'm just going to go like this because if you start down here and suddenly the head's too far, it can be a problem. So I'm going to give an idea of where I want this line happening. Like I said, this is just a general kind of layout. And then I'm also going to draw in the shadow shapes. So when I say that, I'm not just talking about the shadow, like a cast shadow from something. That's what we think when we're walking, we see our shadow. Well, we don't see when we're walking that half of us, is in shadow because the light's hitting the one side. So I want you to think not objects, but light and shadow. And that's just a hard thing to get through your head. But the more you paint, the more it will make sense. Okay. Now I'm just trying to get these two guys. I want to see on placement of where they're going to come out. Right now, just because I have two of them, I don't want to draw the whole one and go, oh wait, I don't have room for the other guy over there. It's always good to get your placement down before you spend a long time drawing and perfecting everything and realize, oh yeah, you got a cool chick here, but it's not in the right place. And when you do something and you really like it, it's hard to get yourself to erase it, but you have to. Or cut out the rest of the painting. You can already see I'm getting a little high here. We'll see how it comes out. I like my animals kind of close up and personal, so I don't really want to shrink them down too far, but we'll see if I've left it enough room. If not, you'll get to see me do it again. Okay, so I can see that shadow shape I didn't make quite long enough, but that's okay. Now when you're sitting down, I'm sitting down just because it's a small painting and it's a little easier to get in on it for details. But you have to do the same thing that you do with the big painting, and you have to make sure you get up and look back, because if you're too in here, you're not seeing the whole thing as a whole. I'm just going to get back for a second before I keep going, so I know if I have them placed where I want them. I think the placement's okay. This guy's a little bit bigger here, and this guy's a little smaller, which kind of is, but not to the extreme I have it. So I'm just going to flesh him out a little bit more. And, or maybe I should say her, they're chicks. They probably are hens, but whenever I've had chicks, I always get surprised with a rooster or two, which I don't mind because they're great models. Okay, so this is the other part. I need to make sure His little beak is higher than the other ones. So when I look at that, I realize this guy's head needs to drop a little bit. I'm also trying to look at the shape here in between them. If you have problems with drawing, look for the negative shapes. If that doesn't work, and you're working from a photo, you can turn it upside down. Turn this upside down. Sometimes our brains want to do something like make a face look forward, and you really fight it if you're thinking of face or something like that. If you turn it upside down, you just look at shapes, and it can save a lot of things. Okay, so if I'm thinking that guy's head's there, I want this little beak there. I'll make sure that's angled good enough. Like I said, it's just for placement. Sure, you could draw it all out, but I don't want you to get too attached to your drawing because we'll be losing it as we go further. Okay, so I think right here, we got that little part coming down. Let's go in here. This back leg. Just don't want this to get too far back. That's there, then it looks like his wing. And just so you know, baby chicks can fly. They're hilarious when they fly. When I'm photographing them, I look at the photos later, and it's amazing for a little thing, how far up in the air, you know, it's going, and it's like on its first flight. It's pretty cool. That's the fun thing about working with animals, is I get to see things like that, and I just enjoy hanging out with them. Okay, so his little tail's going to be over here. Kind of angled the tail a little bit there. Okay. Right. And then as I block it in, we'll be able to see a little bit better where that drawing is. Now, this guy we're going to make a little bit bigger. Okay, so we've got that beak there. We want this one here. It kind of goes up like that. Angled a little bit. Yeah, see, this will help. We just didn't get his body quite big enough. sure I got enough room here for that little wing. Yeah, I got them a little too short too. But that's okay because I had this line that needs to be pulled back out, and that will help. I want to make sure I have some of that light coming in there, but his legs are pretty angled there. It's a little hard to read, but once we get the paint around it, it'll be easier to see. Let me step back. All right, so I brought this out. I call it my cheat sheet. If you've done a value study, I mean, right now I'm not starting on value yet, but I just want to see, like I can see I'm getting a little bit bigger on the chicks. Not much, but we're pretty close to where it is. This guy can get a little smaller. It doesn't have to, be exactly the same as that. But when I start doing the value, like if I'm doing that, and that, and that, and I get mixed up on which is, because it's in color, it's hard to think of which needs to be darker, then you pull that out and just check your values against that. And it can really help. I like to use two of the same brushes, because then if I'm doing color and light, I can switch over rather than trying to get all the paint out of the dark one to do the light one. Even though I did get mixed up a little bit here because my light one has a little blue in it. You'll also note I wipe my brushes a lot because once you put color down on the painting, every time you touch that painting, you pull color off. If you just take it and mix it back in there, you're muddying up your paint. So if you wipe it off before, you aren't bringing that color back off of there. Okay, so I'm going to take and use this one for the darks. And I'm going to start with my darker shadow. When I say it's the darker of the shadows, if you're looking at the value scale, it's not going to be, the straight black value, because you've got these dark accents here. So you have to, leave room for that. And I'm doing it in color. We don't paint over the black and white. That's just a different study. Sometimes if I'm in a different space, I have to play around a little bit to make sure what I'm seeing here is what's going to be up there. So it's a little darker than I want. That's better. And again, I'm trying to keep my darks kind of transparent, so a little bit of the warmth comes through. When I'm looking, it's a little darker over here. We're not putting that chick in. A little dark over there and over here, kind of versus there, but you can kind of play around with that. Don't worry too much about losing edges or your drawing. Keep my darks a little more transparent so they don't look too heavy. These are my own girls too. So when I make adjustments, if I want something darker, just a tad of the paint, or you'll go way off. You just, if it needs to be warmer, pick a warm color to add to it. If it needs to be a little cooler, add that. It's just a little darker in here, kind of like what's happening over there. Sometimes with the photograph, I may have more information than I want, so I don't use all the information. I may leave something out. I think the artist's job is to take a complicated world and simplify it for their audience. However, I don't just make things up like I think this would be great here, because everything's relative as far as light and shadow. So I might have a bigger photo. If I want something moved, I may move it, but it's from that same time of day, that same weather, same light source if I'm putting it in there. I don't, grab something from a cloudy day and put it into something that's a sunny day, because the colors will be all wrong. Just carrying on. This a little light over here, and it kind of carries over to here. Just small adjustments that we're keeping it still in that big shadow shape. Okay, so that in my shadows, that's the one that needs to stay the darkest. If, when I start doing the others, if it needs to go darker, I'll push it darker. So now we're going to go for this one, which is the second darkest shade. And she's got all the fun color on her. But I can't make that fun color too light or it won't stay in the shadow. I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush. Again. How I'm coming up with the colors. It's not just looking at that and holding it up and trying to match it. You don't need to go down to Home Depot and have them say match that color. It's what I was talking about, how everything is relative. It is one of the more vibrant colors, even though it's in the shadow, that we have going on in here. So I need to keep that in mind, but I also need to keep in mind that it can't be coming up into these light shadow colors. So I'm just kind of doing an overall breakdown of the color. And then when we get to modeling and stuff, I'll make a little more changes on it and adjustments. Colors can look different too when they're against another color. So when I get the whole thing blocked in the shadows, we'll look and make adjustments. And this chick does get cooler as she gets out to the edges there. A little reflected light. This might be too green, but let's see. Yeah, it's also too dark. I'm going to try the other blue on that one. Okay, color's better. It needs to go slightly lighter. when I have a color on my brush, I try to see where else it might be needed. That's why I may want to stick on this chick so I can show you how we're keeping into the value, but if there's another spot on this chick, I'll put it on there. Because chicks are fluffy, even when I'm blocking it in, I'm trying not to get too hard of lines. And right now I can't tell if the blue reflected light is going to be too light to stay in the shadows, but I'm going to leave it till the end where I can judge it against other things. And I get the other lights on and it's darker than it, it gets to stay. Otherwise it will get knocked down in value. Okay, just cruise along, get this blocked in so we can start comparing. This painting is really mainly about shadow, which is a little bit of light, which I like those kind of paintings. I like drama. Not in my life, but in my painting. I think it's a little more red in it. You can see if you're comparing that to that. There is no shadow is this color. It's just like, skin color. There's no just Caucasian skin color and Caucasian skin color in shadow. It is whatever you're talking about, whether you're talking about a duck, a white duck, you take that white duck and put it into a different situation. The shadows are going to be different colors depending on what's around it. The way I paint, it's not about going out and getting the most colors you can find and matching it up to a certain situation. It's about everything being relative. Looking at one shadow versus the other, which is warmer, which is cooler, which is more intense, which is less intense. which is more red, which is more blue, which is lighter, which is darker. So there's no set color for a shadow. It just depends on the time of day, if it's hitting grass, if it's hitting flowers, if it's hitting a road. Shadows can be any color. Under the eye, it's just a little more green there, so I'm just going to put that down. I'm not going to put the eye in quite yet. The reason why I'm not putting the eye in yet, because once I get all the other shadow shapes in, I might need to make changes. So, you know, why put on details? Paint the dog before the fleas. This lower leg established. Kind of angles. A bit more than I had it. Okay, let me get the beak and legs in there, and I don't want to go too much into modeling, even though I'm getting carried away here. The fun thing about painting is you can put some music on, you can listen to an Audible book, you can just start painting and hours will go by and you won't know what happened. I found I have to set alarms on my iPhone because what feels like I've been there 15 minutes could be hours. But that's why it's so fun. You get to be in your own little world. Now the legs are a little dark right now because it shouldn't be as dark as that, but I am going to come in as we model and kind of go over it and just leave that little dark part there. Also in areas like where it gets, a little too thick, I find it's easier rather than trying to get that exact line. The shape, when I come back in with the other part, I can form it better. And that leg's just looking a little too bright in here. Okay, get that guy's little beak on there. Okay, it's too dark. Whoop. I love it when I go whoop. And just had too much color on that brush. Brought that in. You can always fix your mistakes. Okay, so he is right now my second darkest value. Obviously, the reflected highlights are a little lighter. And we'll see if they stay there later. Now I'm going to go to this because I see that as the next darkest, versus that. It's too dark. Getting better. I don't want quite that blue, so I'm putting a little cad red light in it to gray it down. And there's some bluer spots, but I can add that in later. It's still too dark. Again, trying to keep those edges loose back there. Well, it's lighter, but a little too light. It looks like I have this guy's leg a little too far apart. I'm going to bring it back. I think this is angled a little more like that. As this cooler color gets back by the wall, it does warm up, so I am going to warm that up a bit. As I paint the shadows, really what I'm doing is trying to find out the overall tone and harmony of the painting. What is, in all these different shadows, what are the common elements and what is different about each one? So the common things in the shadow, as far as your value range goes, there's going to be a certain range, and all of your shadows are going to fit in that range. There might be one that's closer to black. There might be one that's more of a light gray. But whatever you've chosen as your range, it can be a tight range or it can be further apart. That's what it's going to have in common. The differences are going to be slight differences in value, slight difference in temperature, slight difference in intensity, and slight difference in color. Goes up a little bit. The reason why I do the shadows first, I believe it helps hold the painting together, and I like to look for ways to connect them. If you suddenly threw in, if we're trying to make judgments on all the lights and all the shadows at the same time, people will get mixed up. They start painting because they see something in the light that's maybe a dark object, and they see something in the shadow like a white duck or a white chick, and they'll start to make those items, they think of them as items rather than light and shadow or objects. Oh, that duck is white, it's all light, when it's not. The shadows got to fall in the shadows. So if you separate it that way, it's easier for people to handle it in a small chunk and make sure they've got all that together, and then do the lights, handle that in a separate chunk, make sure all that's together. And usually when they have problems, they'll get those two things, is when they start modeling the form, they'll make the lights too dark or the darks too light, and then they'll lose a form. I tell people, if you get light and shadow out of a first workshop, you'll be ahead of so many people. So that's really the most important thing.
Hey, would you like to win a beautiful painting worth almost $3,000? We've got a beautiful Joe McGurl plein air study that he's done of the sunset in Maine. It's gorgeous. If you want to have an opportunity to win it, go to paintinggiveaway.com. Just put in your email. That's all you've got to do, and you only need to enter once. We'll be giving away the prize at the end of May. Go to paintinggiveaway.com.
Painting the light. It's what we do as artists, no matter what our style or subject. The way light and shadow work together to make the two-dimensional surface of our paintings come to life. But just how do we do that in a way that is unique and exciting? How do we capture a moment and earn the immediate attention of viewers, stopping them in their tracks? Cheri Christensen answers that in the video Brushwork and Backlight. This video will breathe new life into your paintings and renew your passion for your art. Cheri shows you how to separate the values of light and shadow, and she helps you look differently at color and form using brushwork as you never have before. Like many artists, you may want to know how to escape the confines created by a more literal and photorealistic painting style. And this video helps you do just that, encouraging a more distinct, painterly, and impressionistic approach.
I think my backlighting and brushwork video with the little chicks will help students. I found from in class, people love the little chicks, and they like to do the backlighting, but they just aren't quite sure how to do the backlighting and come with the wrong photos that aren't backlit and think they can just add a little halo around it, which it doesn't work that way. So first you have to come up with a good photo that's backlit, and then the transition between your shadow and the backlighting really has to be kind of softly worked, so it's not too harsh going from one side to the other.
Follow along with Cheri as she paints using loose brushstrokes to apply a menagerie of colors in a thoughtful way. Learn to create subtle transitions in color and value, as well as between light and shadow, that will give you a stunningly realistic look. Once Cheri shows you how to see subtleties in reflected light and color and shadows, you will never unsee them. From an initial drawing with paint to establish an intimate composition that will draw in your viewer, to laying in shadow shapes full of unexpected color and reflected lights, it's about seeing, interpreting, and approaching form, lines, color, and light differently. Then, add lights and details with confident, bold brushstrokes. You'll learn just what colors you need to transform your subject's form and direct the eyes of your viewers. Follow along with Cheri. Watch every brushstroke she makes as she works from a photograph. You will discover the techniques she uses to produce a painting that really pops with warmth, light, contrast, and color, even in the shadows. You will see how she makes simple but well-placed brushstrokes, her brush filled with paint, and how she manipulates them for the best effects. Join Cheri now as she takes you on a painterly journey, demonstrating a style and techniques that will change your painting practice forever. Cheri Christensen, Brushwork and Backlight, now available on DVD and as a digital download.
That was Brushwork and Backlight with Cheri Christensen, and you can learn more about it at lilyartvideo.com. Now let's get to know Cheri.
I've been painting for a while. I think I started about 1990, something like that. My cousin did some painting, and she would just copy other paintings, and I saw her doing it, and I always wanted to paint, so I asked her to show me, and she showed me, and I really liked it. But I wanted to know how to paint anything, and she didn't know how to do that. So I asked around, and people said, well, go to art shows and find someone whose work you like, so you just aren't going and taking from any student or any teacher, because you don't want to take from the wrong teacher. I'm glad they said, because I was in Enumclaw, Washington, very small town. I could have easily got with the wrong person. So I went to art shows, and I heard about Ron Lucas, who was teaching in Seattle. I'd come up from California. I thought, oh gosh, I've got to drive into Seattle, 7 to 10 at night. It's about an hour and a half from Enumclaw, but I wanted to do it. So I did it, and we worked on portraiture first and still lifes. I felt like I needed more drawing skills. He goes, well, don't quit painting, just come an extra day. You can sit in front, sit there and draw, which I was scared to death to do because everybody's painting behind me. But I did it. If you want to do something bad enough, you just, put yourself out there and do it. And so that's how I got started. After he got his, and like I went to every workshop he did, every class I could get into, I just obsessively did it, and I'm glad I did, because he got hired off to DreamWorks. So suddenly I was boosted out of the nest and had to either figure out a way to make a living at it or go back to retail, is what I was doing before, and I did not want to do that. So I somehow figured out how to make a living. I'm inspired to paint by, I grew up in a small farming town. Dairy farms, cattle ranches. My grandfather was Cattleman of the Year, so I was around all of that. Also horse ranches. And when I started going to Ron Lucas, learning how to paint, I had moved back to Enumclaw for a while, trying to live off the land. And so I had a bunch of animals around me. I had goats, I had chickens, I had donkeys. And it wasn't like we weren't existing off the farm. It was just kind of, we enjoyed having the animals and had, chickens for layers, for the eggs and everything. And once I started painting, I was doing portraiture and still life, and I thought, well, maybe I'll paint flowers or something. And then after Ron, towards the end when I started going off on my own, I thought, well, okay, who am I? What do I want to be? And I just looked around. It's like, okay, you're sitting on how many acres? You're surrounded by all these different animals and dogs and cats, and you have a goat that comes into your laundry room sometimes. I think maybe what you like, it's animals. It's all around me. But I didn't know what that, I was taught to paint from life. And so I couldn't figure out how I was going to paint an animal from life. So I just started doing the animals from photos, but doing them on my own. I didn't show them to my teacher or anything like that. And my husband at the time did a surprise birthday party for me. And it was a real surprise because I had paintings all over my house that I didn't mean anyone to see. I mean, they were in process. And he invited my teacher. And we had just come back from a trip. I swear I just crawled out of the back of the van, went in, everyone's going, surprise. And I thought, how cool. And then went, oh no. And how do I just run up and pull these off the wall without anyone seeing? And I couldn't think of how to do that. And my teacher came up and, pointed out the better ones and said I had no idea you're doing these. I love them. And I'm like, yeah, but I did from photos. And he goes, it doesn't matter. It's okay. You can do that. And it was very validating to me because it gave me an okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And it's all right. So that's how I started. Besides animals, the other subjects that I like, really it's color and light that I like to paint. Anything that has cool color and light on it can be a subject, whether it's a person, a street scene, a restaurant scene. I've done still lifes with wine bottles, wine glasses. I like the way you can kind of lose edges on wine glasses. I find waiters really fun, especially when they're cooking or the cooks when there's all these lights on them, just cool lighting, cool effects. So I try to have a camera on me, even if I don't have my good camera, at least have my iPhone on me because you never know when you're going to see some kind of cool lighting and you want to give that a shot. The reason why I paint with oil paint is because you can make changes really easy with it. Oil painting is a process. You put it up, you check out the color, it's relative to the color next to it. You make judgments once it's up. And I always have students saying, I don't know what color this is. What color is it? And they're looking at the photo. I go, I don't know, mix, try to get the color, put it up there. Then you go, oh, does it need to be warmer? Does it need to be cooler? Does it need to be lighter? Does it need to be darker? Does it need to be more intense or more grayed out? That's how you make your decisions. And you can do that with oil paint. And I just love that because it's just the process. I can do it. If things go wrong, I can scrape it and go back. When I'm painting with oil, the most difficult part for me is when it dries before I finish the painting. I like to paint wet into wet. But sometimes something comes up, you're working on a big painting, you have to leave, go out of town, you got to come back to it. I try to get the most important parts done and all the block in done throughout the painting before I have to leave it. So if I have to come in, I can kind of just rework certain areas and pull that together. But I prefer to do it while it's all still wet. What I love most about painting with oil, it's hard. It's a hard question because there's so many different things I like about it. But I love the paint, I have to say. I mean, I'll put my fingers in. Yeah, I know it's not good for you, but I will put my fingers in the paint sometimes just to get an effect I want. You know, I have painted with gloves before where you can really mess around. You can use any kind of tool, really, to put the paint up, whether it's a brush. I keep all my old brushes because some have weird effects, and it's kind of fun to play with some of that. But I really like being able to have thick paint. And I know some artists, you know, pre-gesso their board underneath with thickness on it, so it looks like they have thick paint, and they're just going lightly over it. Me, I want to put the thick paint on and play with that paint. And I know it does make it harder to make changes, but I think it's worth the effort just to get that texture. I like the 3D kind of effect of oil paint. If I had to pick two of my favorite, I'm saying favorite, I'm not saying necessarily my best paintings, but my favorite paintings, I did a painting called Green Valley. It was one of my first larger animal paintings. I'd done some smaller ones. Green Valley is an area by where I grew up. So it has that, you know, my background and everything in it. Beautiful Green Valley, group of cows standing out there, little calves with them. I took the picture. If you saw the pictures I used to work with, you'd be surprised I could make paintings out of them. Now I take much better pictures. At this time, no, just, you know, point and shoot, and get what you get. And I think since my grandfather was a cattleman, I, you know, really wanted to paint cows. And I had done a little study of it I had really liked. And this is the first one where I made it a bigger painting. And it actually went to New York before I ever went to New York, and it got an award. So I thought my cows were great. They got an award in New York, and it came back, and I was gonna sell it, and I think someone was interested, and I don't know if they changed their mind or what. Anyway, I ended up keeping it because it meant so much to me. So I still have that painting. It has a lot of the same things that I do now, just a lot less paint, you know, on it. I wasn't as brave with the paint then, but it's really the first large animal painting that I pulled together. The other painting, and it's just because it's recent, I just did one called The Mystic, and it's one of not my first raven painting. I had done The Trickster first. Friends of mine had given me, I saw this photo on their Facebook page of this great raven. They're in Santa Fe. And asked them if it was theirs, and it wasn't. They had a friend, a photographer. Anyway, I got the rights because I do believe, you know, you either shoot your own photos or you get a right to use that photo because that belongs to somebody else. So they talked to their friends, said it was fine, so I got the rights to use the photo. I did the first one how I would normally just, you know, paint an animal. And then I wanted to play around with paint and kind of dragging the paint over it. And so I got a slightly bigger canvas or board, so I had more room to kind of play with it. So I'm using the same pose, but I'm playing with the background color, I'm playing with lost edges, and I just had so much fun playing with that painting that I actually went back. I'd been to the Tower of London a long time ago, and I found my old video camcorder, and it's hard to get things off those old camcorders these days. But anyway, somehow I managed to get off the shots of the ravens, so I pulled a bunch of raven shots, and then have been doing more raven paintings where I'm making things up more, where to me, like what I'm teaching here is more paint what you see. So I'm just taking it a little further. Still, you know, the same idea of, you know, making the animal, but I might be putting it into situations and playing more with the paint and the edges on it. That's it. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you'd like to check out more of my work, you can reach me online at www.CheriChristensen.com.
That was Cheri Christensen, and the video is called Brushwork and Backlight, and you can learn more about it at lilyartvideo.com. I hope you enjoy your day. I'm Eric Rhodes.
Painting the light. It's what we do as artists, no matter what our style or subject. The way light and shadow work together to make the two-dimensional surface of our paintings come to life. But just how do we do that in a way that is unique and exciting? How do we capture a moment and earn the immediate attention of viewers, stopping them in their tracks? Cheri Christensen answers that in the video Brushwork and Backlight. This video will breathe new life into your paintings and renew your passion for your art. Cheri shows you how to separate the values of light and shadow, and she helps you look differently at color and form using brushwork as you never have before. Like many artists, you may want to know how to escape the confines created by a more literal and photorealistic painting style. And this video helps you do just that, encouraging a more distinct, painterly, and impressionistic approach.
I think my backlighting and brushwork video with the little chicks will help students. I found from in class, people love the little chicks and they like to do the backlighting, but they just aren't quite sure how to do the backlighting and come with the wrong photos that aren't backlit and think they can just add a little halo around it, which it doesn't work that way. So first you have to come up with a good photo that's backlit, and then the transition between your shadow and the backlighting really has to be kind of softly worked so it's not too harsh going from one side to the other.
Follow along with Cheri as she paints using loose brushstrokes to apply a menagerie of colors in a thoughtful way. Learn to create subtle transitions in color and value, as well as between light and shadow, that will give you a stunningly realistic look. Once Cheri shows you how to see subtleties in reflected light and color and shadows, you will never unsee them. From an initial drawing with paint to establish an intimate composition that will draw in your viewer, to laying in shadow shapes full of unexpected color and reflected lights, it's about seeing, interpreting, and approaching form, lines, color, and light differently. Then, add lights and details with confident, bold brushstrokes. You'll learn just what colors you need to transform your subject's form and direct the eyes of your viewers. Follow along with Cheri. Watch every brushstroke she makes as she works from a photograph. You will discover the techniques she uses to produce a painting that really pops with warmth, light, contrast, and color, even in the shadows. You will see how she makes simple but well-placed brushstrokes, her brush filled with paint, and how she manipulates them for the best effects. Join Cheri now as she takes you on a painterly journey, demonstrating a style and techniques that will change your painting practice forever. Cheri Christensen, Brushwork and Backlight, now available on DVD and as a digital download.